Welcome to LogisticsSales.com, where in today's episode, we'll be talking about acing the interview. So stick around and let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of LogisticsSales.com, where today we're going to be talking about acing the interview. I'm your host, Dean, and with me as always are my co-hosts, Damon and Gail. How's everyone doing today?
Doing good, Dean.
Doing very good. I'm really excited for today's episode.
Right on. So we're still on the segment of navigating job opportunities, and we've gone through researching the opportunity, we've tailored our application, and now we got through and we're about to ace our interview. So today we're going to discuss how to not just prepare, we're going to talk about negotiating terms and basically how to land that job of your dreams. So I say how to prepare, but really come prepared.
So that's excellent, Dean. And the question is, how do we really get prepared? And the first step of being prepared is set your intention. Know why you want to work there. Why do you want to work at the place that you're going to go have this interview at? Make sure that the intention is set before you get there. And then after you find out why, find out like what is it that you truly want from this job? Are you looking for a certain salary? Are you looking for vacation time? Are you looking for that work-life balance? Are you looking towards different roles and responsibilities where you want to grow into a future career? Is this the right career for you? But know what it is that you actually want from the employer as you go into the interview. And what this is going to allow you to do is just be able to go in with a certain level of confidence. Knowing what you want actually helps the employer to show that you're confident in the role and you understand what the role is all about. And again, if it's a benefit to you as well, the employer wants to make sure that you're going to be happy as well. And so a lot of this stuff will convey during the interview process, where it's going to allow you to showcase your skills and really be able to help you answer the questions when you get asked some of the questions during the interview process. Know what you also have to offer the employer. So we talked about this earlier in the last episode about, when you list out your expertise, your experience, your skill sets, it's also knowing, okay, what value do I bring to the table? What are my main negotiating tips here when I'm applying for this interview? And that's what, when you're talking to the HR manager, you really want to be clear on your intentions and saying, okay, well, if I have a certain skill set that's valuable to the employer, how do I sneak this into my interview? And again, setting those intentions ahead of time is going to allow you to have that better conversation when you are in the process of dealing with that HR manager.
Yeah. I think what it really does is give you almost a roadmap of what you want to project in your interview. Because of course the employer is going to have their set of listed questions. They're going to have specific intentions of what they want to receive from you in that interview. But having a roadmap of what you want is also so important for making sure that what's important to you is heard and how it aligns to their organization. Which actually, talking about roadmaps here, if you go ahead and open up the worksheet today, you'll notice that questions 1, 2, and 3 are those specific questions. So go and start brainstorming and figure out why you want to work there, what's important to you and what do you want out of the meeting, and what can you bring to the company, and start brainstorming those so that you can start figuring out the storylines that you're going to attach to those questions.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, you want to do the research. And really, you want to know how to answer their questions. Damon was saying you want to come in with some confidence and everything. You want to be prepared to sit down and have a conversation. A lot of times you could go online, you can look up common questions asked in interviews. And a lot of them, obviously, once they get your resume, they're going to have questions about you and they want to know more about you. So this is your chance to sell yourself.
And it's important for you to understand how that company operates. If you can show an understanding of the way that their systems run or the way that their operations are structured, it really is going to go a long way. So making sure you're prepared, not just for their questions, but for how you can kind of implement your skill sets into the way that they operate.
And going back to the research component, if you understand what that company is all about, their mission statement and their company values, now you can see how your skills and experience relate to what they actually do. And if you're able to kind of show the company that you're a really good fit for that company, the only way you're really going to be able to show that is through the research that you've done. And it's going to make an impression on the HR manager. The more that you're experienced with what they do, the less they have to explain, the better you're going to sound in that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really conversation is the best way of putting it. It's better, if you picture an interview, obviously you see a hiring manager sitting on one side of the table and you on the other, and they're asking you questions. And you don't just want to get to a question and answer kind of scenario. What's really, and I think a lot of interview structure is moving more towards a conversation anyway. So you want to be able to carry on a conversation. And by doing your research and understanding about the company and maybe about their mission statement and what they're all about, it'll give you the opportunity to ask questions. And so obviously you want to wait until you're given the opportunity, but you want to have some of those questions answered. And by doing your research, you maybe checked out their website, or you might have had the benefit of knowing somebody who's worked there, but go through and look at it and, take look at the reviews, take them with a grain of salt, but still check everything out and gather as much information you can, because you want to show that you've put in the work. And by doing that, they'll see that you're willing to do the work.
It shows your experience too, right? It says, if you're using their terminology and based on what they're doing, their projects, now you look like you're the expert in their company. And they're like, wow, you're such a good fit because you actually can speak the same language as them. And when you have that interest compared to any other applicant that's coming in there, that's going to really give you a shoe in. And even if you don't have the experience, if you're talking about what they actually do, it's going to sound like you actually do have experience.
Right.
And I was just going to add, sometimes when you're looking at some applications or some different job postings, they may not give you all the details that you do need to go in fully prepared. So if you actually look at question number 4 on your worksheet, you'll notice that it is basically asking you to research 5 different jobs with the same title as the one you're applying for different organizations. The purpose for this is to be able to look at what that same role in different organizations requires, so that you have a full understanding of the things that may go into the job that might not be shown on the actual posting, because it's going to give you that added level of preparedness. If you can go in and say, hey, I don't know if you guys need this skill because it wasn't listed, but I can do A, B, and C as well, and it's going to really elevate you. In addition to that, you also want to make sure for the company that you're applying to that you do a little research on what's important to them. What is their mission? What are their values? Even if they don't specifically state it on their website, I guarantee there's going to be some clues in the website that it's going to give you an indication of what's important for them.
Yeah, you want to walk the walk and talk the talk. And after that, you want to look the part.
Exactly. You definitely want to make sure you're looking the part. When it comes to the interview, you want to make sure that you dress appropriately for the interview that you're having. If it's, for example, if you're a car mechanic who's going into a mechanic shop for a interview, maybe jeans and a t-shirt are totally fine. But if you're an executive looking for like a top level, C-level position, you're probably going to want to wear a suit and tie or a business formal. So really assess kind of what is that job I'm applying for, what kind of dress code are they going to have, and do I have what I need in order to make that happen. Also, you don't have to be too fancy, especially if it's your first time going to like a corporate level. You don't have to go out and buy $1,000 suit. Just make sure you're wearing like a nice button-up t-shirt, a nice pair of clean pants, or if you're doing interviews online, it's very common these days to have interviews through Zoom. Is it just a nice, clean, plain t-shirt? Even that is going to be much more of an impressive kind of outlook that you're going to give to the employer than maybe like a graphic tee or like a baggy oversized hoodie. So make sure you assess what you're wearing for those interviews.
And I think that kind of takes away from the distraction. If you're just, cleanly dressed, just be presentable. And again, let your personality, because you've done the research, because you've actually prepared the resume and you're ready for this interview process, you want to take away from the distraction, which is maybe clothing, and you want to focus it more on you, right? And have yourself shine. And the confidence comes from doing the research.
Yeah. And being yourself. It's like, I don't know, might not be the greatest example in the world, but I'm picturing going to a breeder or a kennel to pick up a dog, and you want to buy this new dog, and you pick it up and it's super well behaved, and then you bring it home and it just tears your place up. It's buyer beware. You don't know what you're getting yourself in store for. So when you're in your interview, obviously by being yourself, the hiring manager knows exactly what they're getting. You don't want to present yourself one way and then you show up at work the first day once you land the job and you're a totally different person. So again, it's your brand. You want to have confidence and pride in yourself to show what and why you're the best person for this job.
And just matching your dress code according to the job that you're doing. So if you're selling like, let's say $1 million jewelry, then you obviously want to look the part. You want to dress to the nines. It's a high dress, dress to impress type of job. But if it's not, then don't worry about it so much.
Yeah, I think the key is just don't overthink it, but make sure you do put some thought into it. And then like a little bonus tip here as well, if you are going to an interview that's in person, don't pack on the cologne or perfume. There's some offices that do have like fragrance rules. Sometimes people are very sensitive to it. And it can be really distracting in an interview if you walk in and like it just fills the room. So just a little tip, sometimes just a little bit of deodorant and, shampoo and conditioner is all you need.
And that's for the room. And then now when you were talking before, sometimes there's a lot of interviews that are online. So with your virtual interviews, you also want to prepare the room accordingly as well.
Yeah. So that means if you are doing a virtual interview, do you have a nice kind of clean, concise space that you can conduct that in? And things that you want to watch for are, do you have clutter in the room? Is there anything that you can kind of get out of the way so that you have like a nice, non-distracting background for your interview? In addition, things like lighting is really important. If you are really shadowed and dark, it might be hard for the interviewer to really see you and kind of gauge you as a person just because they're so focused on the fact that they can't see you.
And you want to make sure you have zero distractions. If you have an area where you can have an interview and with the door and that can be closed, so it's just you, not only will the interview have time to focus on you and not get distracted, but you'll not be distracted by that dog you went to the kennel and they're jumping up on the computer and distracting you while you're trying to answer those questions.
Yeah, and be careful about the background. Sometimes people use a lot of virtual backgrounds, but they'll start glitching. Like half your head is going to start going missing in this background when you're having it if you haven't checked your internet connection. So make sure you check your internet connection too. Pay attention to, maybe pre-record yourself prior to even going into an interview. See how the background works. Practice it with a friend. See how it comes across. But, one common tip is also like restarting your computer before you go into an interview process. So to make sure that your computer is capable of completing the interview and you're not running out of memory issues.
So this now brings us to question 6, where it's to have questions you want to ask them. Be prepared and you want to memorize them if possible. So we were talking about the opportunity to ask questions. By doing your preparation, you'll likely see some things on their website or in their mission statement that, I really want to ask my hiring manager or the interviewer about this question. But again, it's that opportunity for them to get to know you and have a two-way conversation with you. There's nothing worse than asking an applicant, do you have any questions for me now that I've asked you all these questions today? And for them to say, no, I don't, kind of shuts it down right there. So it's really important to prepare and have some of those questions ready.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that takes us into question number 6. Question 6 is asking some of these questions that you have prepared initially for. And then again, it goes back to like that research. Am I going to do the research to be able to ask the appropriate questions? And these questions become so important because this is where you're going to spend a lot of your time. Besides your home, you're going to spend a lot of time at work. And when you're at work, you want to make sure, like the things that you really want to drive you to success are set out for you. Or if not, maybe these questions spark some of that for future people that are going to be working at this organization, or maybe it's stuff that they don't even know that they can actually use to improve on the work culture that they already have. But like work culture becomes important for some people. Is what type of environment am I walking into? What's important to me is things like job growth. Do I have future opportunities here? If I'm working at a place, is there a long-term vision for me here, or is this just another way for me to earn money to achieve my actual goal? What am I actually doing here? So that intention that we talked about in the beginning of the program is important too. It's why am I here? What do I really want? And those questions need to come out when you have the opportunities. And a lot of these questions will come out while you have your interview because after the person's done asking their questions, they're always going to ask you that question at the end of the interview. And that question is always, do you have any questions for us? And so again, if you're prepared, you're going to have questions for them. But if you're not prepared, you're probably just going to be like, okay, I'm just going to wait and see if I get this job. And most people are going to be like, sorry, I don't have any questions unless it comes up during the interview. Other questions, obviously are salary. When can I start? How soon do you need somebody? Will this fit with my schedule? transportation to and from location of work. But those are some of the common ones. And what we really want you to do is ask about some of the deeper questions that are really going to give you fulfillment in the job that you're going to be doing on a long-term basis. Make sure it's a good fit and something that you could picture yourself doing, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and you see your path ahead of you.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to note that interviews, it's a common misconception that it's a one-way street. But interviews really are a two-way street, because you're not just being interviewed by an organization. You're also interviewing the organization on whether or not it's a good fit for you. And we have to keep that in mind, because we wrote down our negotiables and our non-negotiables and our wants and our why. So does this company fit in with it? Sometimes you go into an interview really excited and maybe it's not a good fit, and that's okay. So you need to make sure that you have proper questions in place to also vet the employer before you go ahead and take that job, right? You want to make sure that you're going through that process. So take some time and then write down those questions. What's important to you and what do you need to know before you accept that job? And then you're just going to want to practice, and practice, because that's how you're going to be prepared for the actual interview.
So that brings us back to these other episodes, talking about our negotiables and non-negotiables. Hopefully you've been following along on our episodes and you've been filling out your questionnaires, and you can go back to these and review them. You might find some other questions you want to ask at your interview by following along some of the past information you've written down. And going from the questions you're capable of asking, let's get back to the interview again, where they're going to be asking you questions. And there's a lot of common questions out there, but you want to show them. And I guess if they're going to ask you one question, at the end of the day at an interview, it's why do I want to hire you, really? So they may not come straight out and ask you it like that, but they may ask and start off real casual. Tell me a little bit about yourself. This is your chance to sell yourself. And sometimes people don't, or feel uncomfortable about talking about themselves, but you've already highlighted your skills and your abilities and put in the work, so you know why you're a good fit for the company. So you want to have that personal sales pitch locked down. You want to sell yourself and basically answer that question that's in the back of your interviewer's mind. Why do I want to hire you? Well, let me tell you about myself, and have that ready.
And that's where that preparation comes in. Everything we've been leading to in this segment has been to prepare you for that question. When they say, tell me about yourself, you should be able to very smoothly go through and say, this is who I am, these are the skills I have, and this is what I can offer your organization. If you put in the work and you put in the practice, you should be able to nail that right there in that interview. And honestly, that does go a long way, because a lot of the time when hiring managers are doing interviews, people get stumped on that question, which should be one of the first ones you have an answer to.
Which brings us right back to why you're there in the first place. If a hiring manager is asking you questions, it's because they want to get to know you, the person. And how are they going to be able to give you a job if they don't even know who you are? So you have to have that question ready to roll.
Exactly. And then one of the next questions that is probably most typical for interviews is, what experience do you have? Now, when it comes to the skills and the experience, you've already kind of given them that general outline with your pre-application process when you do your resume and your cover letter. But this is that time where you get to sell yourself on the accomplishments that you've had in those previous positions, whether it's workplace jobs, whether it's volunteer experience, maybe it's through school or sports or activities. Now you get to sell how those skills that you've built over your lifetime get to translate into the job that you're applying for.
And typically when I'm interviewing people as well, one of the questions I'm always asking are, can you explain some of these experiences? Even though they may have it written off on their resume, I'm always asking them to explain it, because I want to hear it in their own words. And for me, that's very important to realize, okay, what experience did they actually enjoy doing? How are they feeling when they're telling me about this? Do they believe it themselves?
And so for those last two questions that we've gone through, which was tell me about yourself and what experience do you have, they're actually going to be on the worksheet as well. So take some time and actually brainstorm, how would you answer it? If you were in an interview, what would be your answer to those questions?
And one of the other questions I sometimes ask people too is like, why do you want to work here? Is there anything that is this something that you've always wanted to do? Is this something that kind of just came up on a job board? What brought you into our business in the first place?
And it's opening the door to show them how much research you put into there. Because if they ask you why you want to work here, and you start telling them all about their goals and their ambitions and their targets for this upcoming year with a certain product or service, right away they know that you've come prepared.
I think like the main point of all of these questions so far is to basically provide a knock it out of the park interview. If you put in all the work, if you've done a really, really good resume and cover letter and you've gone through all of this process, all you really need to do at this point is sell them the fact that you were being authentic and genuine. You've already made yourself look like a rock star with the work you've put into it. So it's just sealing the deal. So if you come in prepared, it is almost a guarantee that you're at the very least going to be considered for the opportunity, because most people don't put in just the bare minimum. So if you're putting in all this work, it will show through.
And I think it's important when you're filling out your application and you're tailoring it to suit the specific interview, it's important to know that everything you're putting down is open for discussion. So when you do put down your work history, for example, one very common strategy or step in the interview process, your interviewer is going to ask you whether you're currently employed, why do you want to leave your current employer, or if you're no longer employed, why did you leave your last employer? Always be upbeat and never talk down a past employee. And I think it's really important to explain openly and genuinely if you kind of got to the top point of the growth there and you wanted to pursue other opportunities, whatever it may be, just again, be prepared to answer those questions. So don't have it come to you as a shock once you're asked the question and you don't know what to say. So we talked before about practice, and be prepared. That's going to show them, the interviewer and the company, that you've done your homework, and you'll be able to explain for good reason why you're currently wanting to leave your employer or why you left your last employer. But again, it's very important not to be disparaging and always have a answer ready to go.
Yeah, and the reason why employers are really asking this question is because they want to see how much time it's going to take them to train you. And if you're jumping from company to company to company without really a valid reason, then they're really going to think twice about whether they want to hire you, especially if you have really short terms at different companies. And again, this is why we say prepare, right? Research the companies you're going to be working for. See if it's something that matches what you're actually looking for.
You know, and that's a great point. And another one with the gaps in employment. You know, sometimes I think we were even discussing before, if you're putting your most relevant experience first and you're highlighting all of those, and then somewhere in your application there is a gap, again, that's going to be something that employers are going to look for that very reason. And you want to make sure you have a response prepared for that as well.
Exactly. And now we get into how much do you want for that job. So this is where you're going to discuss salary expectations. Now, this is also going to be on question 9 on your worksheet, so do take a look. But what we ask you to do is look up similar jobs and similar roles in other companies and see what the typical wages are running for. The reason for this is because let's just say you're applying to be a cashier at a grocery store. If you go in and say, I want $150,000 a year, they're going to say you're crazy. But if you look at what the typical salary is for that job, you have an idea of what the minimum and the top paying wages are in those roles. Then if you know what the top paying roles or wages are for those roles, you can use the experience and the skills that you have to back up your ask.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think people are sometimes even making an over ask on what they can really do and perform on, because again, the employer needs to see that value for what you bring to the table. So if your skill sets and experiences there, definitely ask for that, large salary. But if the skill sets and experience needs to be improved a little bit to really get to where you want to get to, then you want to say, okay, well, maybe I'm willing to sacrifice and come in at a little bit of a lower wage because I know there's a certain amount of training that I'm going to have to take in order to achieve the results that the employer is probably expecting from myself.
Yeah. And I think if you do have expectations of where you need to be for salary, but you maybe don't have the skills or expertise yet, that's where Damon, he mentioned maybe you can take it a little bit lower of a salary in order to get your foot in the door. But have that conversation and say, okay, if I can come in and I can get the training and I can prove that I can provide the service and the work that you need done for this role, are there going to be opportunities to get up to this wage? Have that conversation with them, because it is important for employers to know what your expectations are.
Yeah, it's definitely really important to have a number in mind. You have your just basic cost of living expenses, and you want to have your basic needs covered. You just don't want to go into an employer and take the first opportunity that comes. If it doesn't work, you want it to be a win-win opportunity where you're going to do everything you can for your employer, knowing your employer is also invested in you.
Yeah, well, I know for me and myself and my experiences in my past, when I've worked for other employers, I've usually stuck around long enough to be able to deliver some sort of results to an employer and to be able to, pay for my own salary in their company. And I never expected the next employer to match what I was making before, because I'm like, okay, that's the company I delivered results for. That's the company I helped grow their revenue. I helped create new opportunities for them. I created new clientele. But okay, is that really fair for me to take all that information and then just say I want to get paid the same amount because I'm going to start off from scratch here and do this all over again? So again, I look at that and I say, okay, well, there's going to be a little bit of a lull before I get going here. So can I come in at a little bit of a discount to, and to really get that salary back as I progress. So a lot of resumes, we do talk about like our strengths, right? And a lot of people, whenever you're interviewing, it's all about, I accomplished this is my skills, da 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 da. But nowadays, a lot of questions that are being asked is like, what are your weaknesses? And are you even aware? And, whether it's done through skill assessments or tests, but nowadays a lot of employers also saying, okay, well, hey, great, you told us about what you can do, what can't you do?
Yeah, and I think one of the easiest ways to kind of assess how to answer that question is think about like conflicts or roadblocks or issues that you've had in your life. Like maybe you're not a very good public speaker. So what steps did you take to overcome that roadblock or that issue that you were having? And that's what employers really want to see. If you say, yeah, I'm really not a very good communicator sometimes, but I've been working on it. I've been going to these public speaking groups and I've been doing online practice and I've been making an effort to go out into more social settings so I can work on my communication skills. That's where you're showing, okay, I do have a weakness, but I'm taking the steps in order to improve myself. And that's what they want to see. They want to see people who are driven to become better versions of themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get into questions for sales candidates. If you're applying for an opportunity with a company that is involving in sales, they're going to ask you, do you have experience in sales? And with LogisticsSales.com, all of our episodes, we're moving towards how to help you on your journey in sales. And we're talking about different strategies and techniques along the way. And throughout this journey, we're going to help develop these with you. But it's important to understand that, we've said this before, we've been doing sales our whole life. So have you. And it's important to showcase and show the interviewer that you have the right attitude. You can demonstrate results, especially if you have prior sales experience. And that's why it's so important to be able to, document and be prepared to talk about them. Did you have KPIs that had been able to measure that you can share with them? Because again, with all the references that you're going to have in your resume too, they may want to follow up on those with your current or past employer. So you really want to take pride in the work you're able to do, because they're going to want to know the experience that you have, especially if it's a sales position, because they're going to look at you to come in and deliver those same numbers, if not more, and hit those top tier levels to elevate not just yourself, but the business as a whole.
And all sales aren't equal. And so I know if you're particularly applying for like a sales position, it is results focused. How well were you able to close on the deals that you were a part of? How, are these results measurable? And the company is going to engage that, and they want to see, okay, well, anyone can go out there and communicate. And, was this business to consumer sales? Was this business to business sales? What type of sales was it? Were people coming to you, or were you having to actually put in the work to go get the sales?
Yeah, great. Because there's so many different ways to sell, whether it's online, whether it's phone calls, whether you're just showing up at a place of business. They're going to ask, and depending on the type of business that you're applying for, they may have a specific sales strategy with whether it's marketing campaigns. So again, we've already done the research. We know it's a specific company that we're going after, so we should have a general idea that this is the type of sales techniques they're applying, and that hopefully is part of the reason why you're applying for it, because that's one of your top skills and experiences that you offer.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add in here as well that if you're a first-time sales applicant, say you've never done a job in sales before, that being said, we all do a bit of sales in our day-to-day lives, but don't be discouraged, because even if you don't have any workplace experience doing sales, you can use transferable skills as ways of convincing an employer why you could still be really good at the job. And that's things like talking about speed in your previous jobs, maybe ways that you persevered through objections, even just coming up with a mock plan on how you would tackle sales in your first 3 months would be a huge thing for an employer to look at and go, okay, they may not have the sales experience, but they came in ready and they came in with a plan. And that could be the difference between hiring you or not. But also do have that expectation that if you don't have experience, you may be looking at starting off at a lower wage and maybe having a commission structure. So as you build out your sales, that's where your revenue will come in from. So be open to those conversations and see where it takes you.
And nowadays, employers look for marketing as a big component. And you talk about marketing strategies. How big is social media nowadays? What exposure, if someone has a really good social media following, what exposure can that give the actual business that you're going to be working for? You can leverage that. So much of this, so much of these skills are transferable. And again, when it looks to getting publicity for the business that you're going to be operating at, maybe social media is a big part of their marketing strategy.
Yeah. And I think the other question specific for what sales applicants may experience is specifically the question of how do you handle or how do you overcome objection? Because that's one of the biggest things that salespeople are going to have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, even an hourly basis. Because sales, unfortunately, it has a lot to do with rejection. You're going to get no's more than you get yeses, but it's how do you persevere through those objections to really become the salesperson that you really are born to be. So how do you overcome objections? That's the question they're going to ask you. Maybe it's just by brushing it off the shoulder. Maybe you have stories of times in your life where you were faced with an objection or a rejection and you were able to overcome it. Maybe it was a job promotion that you applied for and they said, sorry, you don't have the qualifications. And so you went and you drilled down, you got the education, you put in the work, and you were able to prove that you were worthy of that job. These are great stories to be able to relay how you can overcome those objections in an interview.
And you may not even know how you handle objections. If you haven't been doing sales for a long time, you may have to go and look back and wonder, when was the last time I was rejected or was faced with an objection, and how did I handle it? And if I'm going into this opportunity, how am I going to handle it? So again, preparing to answer the question through a past experience will go a long way.
Yeah. And if you're looking at sales, there's two types of sales: outbound sales, inbound sales. Inbound sales, where you have the customers calling you, you're probably not going to have as much rejection because someone's already warmed up to the product and they're calling you for a reason. But when you're having to do outbound sales is when you're going to actually face rejection after rejection after rejection. And it's just like any call that you probably received in the past. If it's telemarketing, somebody calls your cell phone, you're like, okay, man, who is this? Do I really want to take this call right now? And the chances of rejection go skyrocketing. And so to be able to face that, day in and day out in your job and multiple times over the course of a day, is that something that you are ready for and you can handle? So sales, again, is a different beast.
And when you're going through your interview, you're selling right there. You're trying to sell yourself to a potential employer. And then if you're given the opportunity, we've talked about rejections, there's also, hopefully you get into the point of an interview where they're asking you about expectations, and because they're going to want to have expectations of you, you might be given the opportunity to also find out what maybe your expectations are. So it brings us to negotiating some mutually beneficial terms.
For sure. And refer to question number 10 on the sheet. But a lot of times what we're referring to in LogisticsSales.com is two things, right? One is just the entrepreneurship journey. How do you become an independent sales agent? How do you create opportunities for yourself? The second one is just working as an employee, salaried employee for somebody. But the real opportunities lie within the opportunity to create self net worth for yourself and say, okay, if I can get into a business and create opportunities for myself at an initial stage, can I negotiate my terms ahead of time with this employer? And we've seen this in the past where people have given examples of working at a corporation, being able to double or triple the revenue at that corporation and actually take an ownership stake in there. We see this a lot in technology as well, where again, people will come in and they'll get a certain share of that company, and they'll take those shares as a wage to say, okay, well, if I now produce for this company and we get this product successful, now I get an upside of the actual company, and that could turn out to be, again, 1,000 multiple of what I would have earned maybe just walking into there on an entry level salary.
Yeah. And then when you look at it on more of the employee side of it, it's, maybe the question is, can I hit different milestones in my career? We've talked about it in some of our previous episodes that you may sometimes have to take a job that is for lack of a better word, lower on the totem pole than your perfect dream ideal job. So if your ideal job is up here and you're starting out down here, ask those questions and say, what do I have to do in order to get myself to the job of my dreams?
And a lot of this you can do is by checking out the research. If you take a look at the company and see how they operate, you're going to know what type of positions exist within the company. And if you know that the position has different opportunities within it, then you can take a look and say, okay, well, am I just going to get stuck with a standard wage? You know, if that's the intention you go into and you just want that regular wage, that's fine, right? But if there's ways to create strategies where maybe, you know, they're willing to pay X amount of dollars here, but you need a higher amount. Now it's like, okay, well, how can we bridge the gap here? Because there's a gap in between what they're offering and what I want. And so that's where you want to create these strategies to make it a win-win situation. Now it's like, okay, well, maybe you go with a lower base salary, higher commission. Maybe there's other strategies where you do take, you know, a small percentage of net profits and you reduce your wages so you could actually afford the company to be able to hire you. But you want to create situations where it becomes like a win-win situation. And, you know, again, it all comes down to understanding who your customer is or who that employer is and knowing, you know, what opportunities do I have here to negotiate with them.
I think it's really important to come across and showing your flexibility as well, because it's you don't want to go, especially in your first interview, and just lay it all on the line and give it these take it or leave it opportunities. There's some things already in place depending on where you're working with statutory minimums, things you're entitled to under the labor codes. But there are other opportunities that you can look at later on. A lot of employers do annual reviews, and you're given opportunities later on. Right now, you want to get your foot in the door and show them what you're worth. And if you really can produce, especially in a sales position, you'll be able to look at other opportunities with maybe instead of higher wages, if you're bringing in X number of dollars and you've increased their revenue by a certain percentage, maybe you want to negotiate at your annual review an additional week of vacation. Or look at maybe a compensation package that includes a commission. So just know that there's things that you want to be able to talk about and prepared to talk about, because it's going to come up at all of your interviews, and they're very important subjects.
Yes, and I think the key to all of this is making sure that you can present what value you're going to offer that company. If you really want a bunch of, you know, A, B's, and C's from being hired by this company, you need to be able to provide them enough evidence of why you're worth it. And if you can't provide that evidence, then you need to start working on strategies on how you can maybe work your way into it, or just negotiating with the company, because they want to make sure that when they make that hire, that they're not just going to be throwing a bunch of money at you for no results. They want to make sure it's even.
A lot of companies have probation periods, and that's a perfect opportunity to take and say, okay, well, hey, give me 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to be able to show what I can do. And if I can achieve these certain milestones, hey, now I could ask for the ask that I was looking for.
Yeah, great point. And then it comes up time and time again when we're looking through the opportunities and then tilling the application, and now acing the interview, the follow-up. Again, here it is.
Thanks very much, Dean. The only thing before we move on to the follow-up is I did want to mention that you do not want to bring up too many expectations in your interview process. A lot of the times you can kind of go back and do negotiations later, maybe in your review after you've hit your 3 months probationary period, and start to reassess some of your contract details. But you don't want to put too much on there, because if you do have all of these expectations, like I want 4 weeks vacation, and I want this top salary, and I want commission on top of that, and I want shares of your company, and you have everything on your list, then it's a little bit harder for an employer to justify hiring you if there's not as much compromise. So make sure that you are going in with just the main ones. What's most important to you? What are your non-negotiables? And then you present those during your interview. Now, as we move forward, we get into the follow-up. Follow-up is extremely important when it comes to the interview process, because if you walk out of that interview and you never call them again, and they don't call you, you lost an opportunity. You need to have a strategy on how you're going to move forward and find out, hey, what did you guys think of me? Did I get the job? What can I do in order to maybe improve my positioning in the candidates list?
This is the opportunity to ask the questions that you may have missed. So if there's anything that you may have missed at the end of the interview, it's a great time to sit down and just, you know, have a casual conversation, you know, and to see if anything else pops up.
And then the last thing you're wanting to do before you walk out of the building is make sure that the hiring manager has your contact information. And I cannot stress this enough. It is so common for hiring managers to misplace or to lose it. So verify that they have your phone number, that they have your email, and anything that they're going to need to get in contact with you, because the last thing you want to do is ace your interview and then they can't figure out who you were.
And it's really important to make sure you thank them for the opportunity. And one point worth bringing up is to maybe offer, if they have any other questions that perhaps they missed or would want to follow up on, to let them know that you're available anytime to answer those questions, and leave with a huge smile after you thank them for their time. And if you want to make something a little more fun out of it, depending on the type of scenario of interview you're having, you'll be able to read it, how it's ending. If you want to leave them with a lasting impression, maybe just ask them when you can start, and you can go from there. But we hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time, when we're going to talk about, now that you've aced your interview, how you're going to knock your current job out of the park. So stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.